1976, Klingenberg, Germany, a small town nestled in the Bavarian countryside where tradition held sway. People believed in God, the Virgin Mary, and the devil. Anneliese Michel was a young woman who held these beliefs. She prayed and trusted in the Word of God, but her faith would lead her into a terrifying ordeal. Anneliese's story is chilling and tragic. It questions the nature of good and evil. A tale of faith tested and sanity shattered. Anneliese's ordeal became a media sensation. Was she possessed or misdiagnosed? Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. It continues to fascinate and horrify. The haunting tale of Anneliese Michel. Anneliese's story unfolds against a backdrop of deep religious devotion. Raised in a strict Catholic household, she believed in the power of prayer, the reality of heaven and hell, and the existence of evil in the world. Her faith was her bedrock, her guiding light in a world often shrouded in darkness. But that faith, that unwavering belief, would be tested in ways she could never have imagined. The darkness began to seep into Anneliese's life gradually, like a shadow, slowly engulfing the light. What started as subtle changes in her behavior soon morphed into something far more sinister. She became withdrawn, prone to fits of rage and despair. She spoke of voices whispering in her ear, evil voices that tormented her, that mocked her faith. Her family, deeply religious and steeped in the traditions of their faith, feared the worst. Had their daughter, their beloved Anneliese, become a target of something dark and malevolent? The lines between faith and reality began to blur. Doctors were consulted, diagnoses were made, medications were prescribed, but nothing seemed to ease Anneliese's torment. Her condition worsened, the darkness tightening its grip. Desperate for answers, her family turned to the one source of hope they had left, the church. They believed that Anneliese was not merely ill, but afflicted by something beyond the realm of medical science. They believed she was possessed. The church, initially hesitant, eventually agreed to their pleas. An exorcism was authorized, a ritual meant to expel the demonic forces believed to be inhabiting Anneliese's body. It was a decision that would have far-reaching consequences, not only for Anneliese and her family, but for society as a whole. The stage was set for a battle between good and evil, a battle that would push the boundaries of faith, sanity, and the very definition of what it means to be human. And at the center of it all was Anneliese Michel, a young woman trapped in a nightmare, her fate hanging precariously in the balance. Anneliese Michel was born in 1952. The daughter of devout Catholic parents, Josef and Anna. Their home in Liebelfing, Germany, was filled with faith and tradition. Prayers were said before meals, and Mass was embraced. Anneliese was a bright, pious child, attending Mass twice a day. Her life revolved around family, faith, and simple pleasures. The death of her sister Martha cast a long shadow. Anneliese prayed fervently, her faith unwavering. Despite hardships, she clung to her faith. Her faith was a lens through which she viewed the world. For Anneliese, faith was an inheritance and a destiny. When Anneliese was 16, the first tremors of something sinister began to shake the foundations of her life. What began subtly, almost imperceptibly, soon spiraled into a terrifying ordeal. She started experiencing blackouts, brief periods of lost time that left her disoriented and afraid. These episodes, though initially infrequent, increased in both frequency and intensity, casting a pall over her once bright demeanor. The once vibrant teenager became withdrawn, her cheerful disposition replaced by a haunting silence. She was plagued by terrifying nightmares, vivid and disturbing visions that clung to her even after she woke. She complained of a constant ringing in her ears, a high-pitched whine that seemed to emanate from within her own head. The darkness, once a distant shadow, began to encroach upon her life, its icy tendrils winding around her thoughts, her senses, her very being. At first, her family, deeply rooted in their faith, attributed these disturbing changes to spiritual struggles. Perhaps she was being tested, her faith challenged by forces unseen. They urged her to pray harder, to seek solace in the scriptures, to cling to the rituals that had always provided them with comfort. But the darkness only seemed to deepen, its grip on Anneliese tightening with each passing day. Anneliese's behavior became increasingly erratic. She began to exhibit strange tics, involuntary movements that seemed to rack her body. She developed an aversion to religious objects, recoiling from crucifixes and holy water, once sources of comfort and reassurance. The once devout girl now spoke of the devil, his voice a constant whisper in her ear, mocking her faith, tempting her with despair. The line between faith and fear, once so clear, began to blur, leaving Anneliese and those who loved her trapped in a terrifying and bewildering reality. A cry in the darkness. Seeking help, finding fear. Anneliese's condition deteriorated. Her family sought help from medical professionals. Diagnoses ranged from epilepsy to schizophrenia, but nothing helped. Medications and therapies failed to alleviate her torment. The darkness in her psyche resisted conventional treatments. Anneliese endured countless hospital stays and tests. EEGs and lumbar punctures were inconclusive. The family's hope dwindled, replaced by dread. They began to believe her affliction was supernatural. Turning to the church, they sought refuge in faith. Whispers of despair are the church's initial response. The Michel family turned to the church for help. They sought solace in rituals and the comforting words of their priests. Their pleas were met with sympathy and caution. The church approached the situation with hesitancy. Local priests listened intently to their concerns. They witnessed the terrifying changes in Anneliese's behavior, her aversion to religious objects, and violent outbursts. Claims of demonic voices sent chills down their spines. The priests were wary of jumping to conclusions. Exorcism was not a decision to be taken lightly. The church had strict guidelines for exorcism. Priests were torn between helping the family and upholding church teachings. The weight of their decision was immense. Dismissing Anneliese's plight as illness would abandon her to torment. Sanctioning an exorcism without evidence could have devastating consequences. The church grappled with the nature of darkness itself, its ancient wisdom tested by a case that defied easy answers. The devil's advocate, doubts, and hesitations. Within the church, a debate raged. Some priests, moved by the family's pleas and disturbed by Anneliese's deteriorating condition, believed that an exorcism was the only recourse. They saw in Anneliese's torment the unmistakable signs of demonic possession, the hallmarks of a battle for her soul. They argued that to deny her the spiritual intervention of an exorcism would be to abandon her to the clutches of evil. Others, however, urged caution. They pointed to the numerous medical diagnoses, the possibility that Anneliese's affliction was rooted in mental illness rather than demonic influence. They argued that to proceed with an exorcism without first exhausting all medical avenues would be reckless and potentially harmful. They feared that subjecting Anneliese to such an intense ritual without addressing the possibility of a medical explanation for her condition could exacerbate her suffering and further blur the lines between faith and fanaticism. The church, an institution built on centuries of tradition and doctrine, was nonetheless comprised of individuals with their own beliefs, experiences, and interpretations of faith. The decision of whether or not to perform an exorcism on Anneliese Michel became a battleground for these conflicting viewpoints, a microcosm of the broader struggle between faith and reason, between the seen and the unseen. Adding to the complexity was the church's own troubled history with exorcism. Centuries-old tales of demonic possession and exorcism rituals, often intertwined with superstition and fear, had left an indelible mark on the public consciousness. The church, acutely aware of the potential for abuse and misinterpretation, had established strict protocols for dealing with cases of suspected possession. These protocols, designed to protect both the individual and the church itself, demanded rigorous scrutiny, extensive documentation, and the exhaustion of all other possible explanations before even considering the drastic step of exorcism. Section 3, A House Divided, Conflicting Opinions and Growing Concern. As the debate within the church raged, Anneliese's condition continued to worsen. Her physical and mental health deteriorated at an alarming rate. She became increasingly withdrawn, her world shrinking to the confines of her bedroom. The family, caught in the crossfire of conflicting opinions within the church, grew increasingly desperate. They had placed their faith in God's intervention, believing that an exorcism was the only way to save their daughter's soul. The church's hesitation felt like an unbearable delay. The priests involved in the case found themselves walking a tightrope. They grappled with the weight of their responsibility, torn between their desire to alleviate the family's suffering and their obligation to uphold the church's teachings. Adding to the pressure were the whispers circulating within the community. Section 4. Sanctioned ritual, the approval for exorcism. After months of agonizing deliberation, the church finally reached a decision. In 1975, Bishop Joseph Stengel granted permission for an exorcism to be performed on Anneliese Michel. The bishop, a man of deep faith, saw in Anneliese's case a genuine need for spiritual intervention. The decision to proceed with the exorcism was not taken lightly. He appointed Father Arnold Renz to lead the exorcism, Father Renz approached the task with a mixture of determination and trepidation. The approval for the exorcism, though a relief to the Michel family, did little to quell the unease that had settled over the community. The news spread quickly, a chilling reminder that the darkness they had always feared might be closer than they thought. The stage was set for a ritual as ancient as time itself, a confrontation between good and evil. Section 1. The ritual begins, prayers, incantations, and the descent into darkness. The air hung heavy with incense and dread. Father Arnold Renz stood over Anneliese, his right hand raised in a gesture of benediction. The young woman, her body racked with tremors, lay restrained on a makeshift bed. The exorcism had begun. The ancient words of the Roman ritual echoed through the room. Father Renz commanded the unseen entities to identify themselves. Anneliese, her voice hoarse from screaming, responded with a torrent of guttural sounds, her body contorted into unnatural positions, her limbs jerking violently. The exorcism, intended to be a beacon of hope, had instead unleashed a maelstrom of darkness. The Devil's Grip, Manifestations of Evil, and Anneliese's Agony. As the exorcism sessions continued, Anneliese's behavior became increasingly erratic. She spoke in different voices, malevolent entities claiming to be demons trapped within her. They taunted Father Renz, mocking his faith. Anneliese's body became a battleground for unseen forces. She developed an aversion to religious objects, recoiling from crucifixes and holy water. She would growl and hiss at the sight of them. The once devout young woman now spoke of damnation. She claimed to see demons lurking in the shadows. The exorcism sessions seemed to only amplify Anneliese's torment. A body and soul, under siege. The physical and mental toll of exorcism. The relentless assault on Anneliese's body and mind took a devastating toll. She wasted away, her once healthy frame reduced to skin and bones. She refused food and water, claiming that the demons inhabiting her body forbade her from partaking in such earthly sustenance. Her sleep, when she managed to find any, was plagued by nightmares. The physical manifestations of her torment were impossible to ignore. She would often contort her body into painful positions. She would bang her head against the wall, her forehead bruised and bleeding, her voice hoarse from screaming, often reduced to a raspy whisper. The psychological toll was equally profound. Desperate measures, escalation, and the unthinkable price of faith. As the weeks turned into months, Anneliese's condition worsened. The exorcism sessions increased in frequency and intensity. The priests doubled their efforts, their prayers growing more fervent. Anneliese, her body ravaged by the ordeal, grew weaker. Her once bright eyes, now hollow and haunted, reflected the unimaginable torment she endured. She spoke less frequently, her voice reduced to a raspy whisper. The family clung to the hope that the exorcism would ultimately succeed. They prayed alongside the priests, their voices hoarse from chanting. The exorcism of Anneliese Michel was becoming a horrifying spectacle. Silence falls. The tragic end of a life consumed. The final weeks of Anneliese Michel's life were a blur of suffering and despair. Her body, ravaged by months of starvation and the relentless assault of the exorcism rituals, was failing. She was emaciated, her bones protruding through her paper-thin skin. Her eyes, once bright and full of life, were now sunken and hollow. Even in her weakened state, Anneliese never stopped fighting. She would still find the strength to crawl on her knees for hours. Her voice, hoarse and barely audible, continued to recount horrific visions. On July 1st, 1976, Anneliese Michel took her last breath. The battle for her soul had come to an end. Section 2. The Reckoning. Justice, faith, and the search for answers. Anneliese's death sent shockwaves through the community and beyond. The news spread quickly, a chilling tale of faith, fanaticism, and a young life tragically cut short. The authorities launched an investigation, their attention drawn to the emaciated state of Anneliese's body. The investigation sought to determine whether Anneliese's death was the result of demonic possession or negligence. The line between faith and responsibility became blurred. The public grappled with the implications of what had transpired. Some saw Anneliese as a martyr. Others viewed her death as a tragic example of religious extremism. The case ignited a firestorm of debate that raged far beyond the courtroom walls. The search for answers had begun, but the truth remained elusive. Section 3. Echoes of Doubt. The Trial and the Verdict that divided a nation. In 1978, Anneliese's case went to trial. Her parents and 2 priests were charged with negligent homicide. The trial exposed deep divisions within German society, clashing faith and reason. Expert witnesses, both medical and theological, testified, further clouding the case. The jury deliberated for days, and all 4 defendants were found guilty. They received suspended sentences and probation, leaving the nation divided. The haunting tale of Anneliese Michel continues to fascinate and disturb, even decades after her tragic death. Was she truly possessed by demons, as her family and priests maintain? Or was she a victim of a misdiagnosed illness? The evidence offers no easy answers. Her story remains a subject of intense debate and speculation. Section 2. The Thin Veil. Reflections on faith, reason, and the darkness within. The story of Anneliese Michel transcends the confines of a single case, a single life, tragically cut short. It serves as a chilling reminder of the thin veil that separates faith from fanaticism, reason from delusion, and the comforting embrace of belief from the suffocating grip of fear. It compels us to confront the complexities of human experience, the gray areas where certainty gives way to doubt, and where even the most deeply held beliefs can be tested to their breaking point. In an age of scientific advancement and technological marvels, the allure of the unknown, the enduring power of ancient beliefs, and the human need to find meaning in a seemingly chaotic world remain as strong as ever. The case of Anneliese Michel, a stark reminder of the enduring power of belief, challenges us to examine our own assumptions, our own biases, and our own understanding of the world around us. It reminds us that the human mind, for all its complexities and capabilities, is a fragile instrument, susceptible to both extraordinary brilliance and profound darkness. It underscores the importance of compassion, empathy, and the need to approach those who suffer, both physically and mentally, with understanding and care, regardless of the source of their torment. The legacy of Anneliese Michel, etched in the annals of history as a cautionary tale, is a call for greater understanding, for open dialogue, and for a compassionate approach to the human condition in all its complexities and contradictions. It is a reminder that the search for truth, like the battle between faith and reason, is an ongoing journey, one that demands both humility and courage as we navigate the shadows that lurk within us all.